Mack Reynolds stared out the viewport as the transport ship approached the Galactic Defense Academy. The massive structure floated in space like a giant, pretentious snowflake, all gleaming geometric perfection and unnecessary architectural flourishes. Typical aliens, making everything more complicated than it needed to be. Approaching docking bay 71293 Alpha Prime Decimal 4, announced the ship's AI in what Mack had come to recognize as the standard condescending tone all galactic AAs used when speaking to humans. "You could just say Doc 7, you know," Mack muttered. The AI didn't respond, probably calculating 14 different ways to passive-aggressively ignore him. As the first human transfer student to the Academy in its 3,000-year history, Mack knew he was walking into a situation where the bar was simultaneously set impossibly high and insultingly low. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Confederation 30 years ago, and most species still viewed humans as those weird and fleshy creatures from a backwater death world who somehow hadn't managed to blow themselves up yet. The docking clamps engaged with a shudder that Mack was pretty sure wasn't supposed to happen on a properly maintained ship. Great. Even the equipment thought he was a joke. Human Reynolds greeted a tall, willowy alien with skin the color of an overripe eggplant and far too many fingers. "I am Administrative Director Lorax. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy, where we train the finest warriors the Confederation has to offer." The alien's 4 eyes blinked in an unsynchronized pattern that made Mack slightly nauseated. "I'm sure you'll find your experience here educational, if nothing else." "Thanks for the warm welcome," Mack replied, trying not to stare at the way Lorax's throat sac pulsated when he spoke. A sleek, feline creature with metallic scales slunk up beside the administrator. "Is this the human specimen?" it asked, looking Mack up and down with 6 golden eyes, smaller than I expected, and so soft-looking. "Commander Nix Vex," Lorax said with a deferent bow. "May I present Cadet Mack Reynolds, human representative under the Diversity Integration Initiative." "Ah, yes, the charity case," Nix Vex purred, her scales shifting from copper to bronze. "I'm the combat instructor here, human. Try not to break too easily." She flicked a retractable claw out and then back in. "Your species' tendency toward internal bleeding is so inconvenient in a training environment." Before Mack could respond, a bulbous creature that resembled nothing so much as a jellyfish riding a mechanical walker approached. Fascinating, it burbled through a translator. "I haven't dissected a human yet." "And you won't be dissecting this one, Professor Glob," Lorax said firmly, "at least not until after graduation." "Ha! A joke." Professor Glob's translucent body flashed with bioluminescent colors. "I am Professor Glob, xenobiology specialist. Your species' binary gender system and redundant organs are perplexing but will make for an interesting study subject." "I'm standing right here," Mack reminded them. "Yes, unfortunately," came a new voice, deep and rumbling like distant thunder. A massive reptilian creature ducked through a doorway, muscles rippling under armored plates. "Another soft species cluttering up my academy with diplomatic necessities." "Dean Kruger," Lorax said with an even deeper bow. "This is. "I know what it is," Kruger growled. "A human who somehow passed the entrance exams, probably a clerical error." His nostril slits flared. "Listen here, human. This academy has produced the finest warriors in 12 galaxies for millennia. Your presence here is a political formality. Agadi. Stay out of the way, try not to die too messily, and maybe, just maybe, you'll learn enough to become a decent cargo ship security guard someday." Mack squared his shoulders. "With all due respect, sir, I'm here to become a galactic defender, same as everyone else." The Dean's laugh sounded like boulders tumbling down a mountain, ambitious for a species that only recently discovered faster than light travel. "Very well, Cadet Reynolds. Orientation begins in 1 hour. Try to avoid embarrassing your species more than necessary." As the Dean stomped away, Mack caught sight of various other alien cadets staring at him, some with curiosity, others with obvious disdain. A group of crystalline beings were actually taking bets on how long he'd last, not bothering to lower their telepathic projections. 42 standard days, One projected loudly. Too generous. Vex'thul. I give the human 20, maximum. I heard they break if you drop them from even moderate heights. Don't their bones are on the inside? How does that even work? Mack sighed and grabbed his duffel bag. It was going to be a long semester. 3 months into Mack's time at the academy, and things were going about as well as could be expected, which is to say, terribly. He'd been beaten in every combat class, barely passed the theoretical courses, and had become something of a mascot to the other cadets, the pet human they kept around for amusement. This particular morning found the entire academy assembled in the grand training arena, a massive dome with adaptive terrain and atmosphere controls. Commander Nix Vex prowled before the assembled cadets, her scales glittering under the artificial sunlight. Today we will be reviewing basic defensive maneuvers against multi-limbed opponents, she announced. Cadet Zrix, you will demonstrate the proper technique for. The commander's instructions were interrupted by the academy-wide alert system. Dean Krugar's voice boomed through the speakers, all cadets and faculty to the grand reception hall immediately. The assembled cadets exchanged confused glances. The grand reception hall was only used for the most prestigious visitors. Well, you heard the dean, Nix Vex hissed. Move. The grand reception hall lived up to its name, with soaring ceilings that seemed to disappear into the artificial sky and walls embedded with artifacts from 1,000 worlds. At the center stood Dean Krugar alongside 3 of the most intimidating aliens Mack had ever seen. The first resembled a cross between a praying mantis and a great white shark, standing nearly 10 feet tall with serrated limbs that looked capable of shearing through battle armor. The second was smaller but no less terrifying, a writhing mass of muscle and tentacles, each ending in what appeared to be a biological plasma weapon. The third was almost beautiful in its deadly elegance, a being of living crystal and metal, hovering several inches off the ground, with an aura that made the air around it shimmer with heat. The cadets, Dean Krugar announced, we are honored by the presence of representatives from the Skar Dominion, the Vex'thul Collective, and the Crystalforge Alliance, the 3 most feared predator species in the known galaxy. An excited murmur ran through the assembled cadets. These weren't just any predator species, they were the predator species, the ones that had carved out vast empires before most civilizations had discovered fire. They have come with a challenge, the dean continued. As is tradition, every 50 cycles, they select promising military academies to test their champions against. The Galactic Defense Academy has been chosen this cycle, an honor we have not received in over 400 years. The mantis shark stepped forward, its mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. We seek worthy opponents, it said, its voice surprisingly melodic for something with that many teeth. 3 champions from your academy against our 3. Combat to submission. Not death, we are civilized. After all, its mandibles clicked faster, definitely amusement. Dean Krugar nodded gravely. We accept this honor. Our champions will be... He surveyed the assembled cadets. Senior Cadet Vex'thul of the Arcturus cluster. A massive 4-armed cadet stepped forward, his exoskeleton gleaming. Senior Cadet Luma Shi of the Quantum Collective. A being of pure energy contained in a humanoid form bobbed in acknowledgement. And Junior Cadet Krell of the Titan Moons. A stocky, rhinoceros-like being snorted confidently. Mack couldn't help himself. Sir, with respect, I'd like to volunteer as a champion. The silence that followed was so profound you could have heard a subatomic particle drop. Then, all at once, the entire hall erupted in laughter, alien laughter in a dozen different pitches and tones, some subsonic, some subsonic, some so high it made Mack's teeth hurt. Even the 3 predator representatives seemed amused. The crystalline one emitted a sound like breaking glass that Mack assumed was its version of a chuckle. The human wishes to fight? The tentacled horror gurgled. How entertaining. Dean Krugar recovered his composure. Cadet Reynolds, this is not the time for your species' infamous humor. These are serious combat trials against the most deadly hunters in the galaxy. I understand that, sir, Mack said, standing his ground, and I volunteer. The mantis shark leaned down, bringing its face uncomfortably close to Mack's. We accept the human, it declared, mandibles spread wide in what could only be described as a predatory grin. It will make for an interesting appetizer. Dean Kruger looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant, which for his species might have been something pleasant for everyone else. Very well, he said through gritted fangs. The human replaces Cadet Krell. The rhino-like Cadet looked equal parts relieved and insulted. The trials will commence in 3 standard days, announced the crystalline being, its voice resonating through the hall. Prepare your champions. They will need it. As the assembly dispersed, Mack found himself surrounded by a mixture of incredulous and pitying looks from his fellow cadets. You really do have a death wish, commented Zrix, the crystalline cadet who'd bet on his early departure, though I suppose this speeds things up considerably. Mack smiled thinly, always happy to help with efficiency. The next 3 days passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Mack was immediately excused from all regular duties to focus on training, not out of any belief he could win, but rather to minimize the embarrassment he would bring to the academy. No. Commander Nix Vex snarled as Mack completed his 40th lap around the zero-gravity obstacle course. You're still moving like you expect gravity to help you. The Crystalforge representative can manipulate gravitational fields. If you move like that in the arena, you'll be smashed into paste before you can blink. Mack, gasping for breath in his training suit, nodded. Understood, Commander. I don't think you do understand, the feline alien hissed. You have volunteered to face creatures that have evolved over millions of years to be perfect killing machines. The mantis fawn Skar has exoskeletal blades that can cut through reinforced titanium. The Vex'thul's tentacles contain neurotoxins that can paralyze a Chronos bull in seconds. And the Crystalforge entity can generate heat equivalent to a small sun. What exactly do you think you bring to this fight? Mack wiped sweat from his brow. Imagination, Commander. Nix Vex stared at him for a long moment, then threw up her clawed hands in exasperation. Go see Professor Krex. If anyone can help you, it's that deranged genius. Professor Krex's laboratory was located in the depths of the academy, where accidents were less likely to breach the hull. Mack found the professor hunched over a workbench, 6 arms simultaneously manipulating various tools as he dissected what appeared to be a mechanical squid. Ah, the human volunteer. Krex exclaimed without looking up. Come in. Just don't touch anything that's glowing, pulsating, or screaming. Mack carefully navigated around tables covered in bizarre equipment. The Commander Nix Vex sent me. She said you might be able to help me prepare for the combat trials. Did she now? Professor Krex finally looked up, all 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Fascinating. She must really believe you're going to die horribly. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be, Krex said cheerfully, but perhaps there is something we can do. Humans are such peculiar creatures, so fragile in some ways, yet surprisingly resilient in others. He scuttled around Mack, examining him from various angles. Tell me, what do you consider to be humanity's greatest advantages? Mack thought for a moment. Endurance, adaptability, problem-solving. Yes, Krex waved a dismissive hand. The standard answers in your species' diplomatic packages. But what makes you dangerous, Cadet Reynolds? I'm not sure I understand the question. Krex sighed dramatically. Most species in the Confederation evolved as specialized predators or prey. They have specific evolutionary advantages: venom, armor, speed, strength, but also specific limitations. Humans, however. He poked Mack in the chest with a spindly finger. Humans are generalists. Not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most venomous, but adequately capable in nearly all categories. It makes you unpredictable. For the next several hours, Professor Krex ran Mack through a series of bizarre exercises and tests, many of which seemed to have no connection to combat training. He had Mack solve puzzles while hanging upside down, identify smells while listening to discordant music, and throw objects at targets while reciting Earth poetry backwards. What does any of this have to do with fighting 3 apex predators? Mack finally asked, exhausted. Krex's mouth appendages formed what might have been a smile. They expect you to fight like an alien trying to be good at combat. You need to fight like a human who's good at being human. As the training days progressed, word spread throughout the academy about the human cadet who was either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. Betting pools formed, with the odds against Mack reaching astronomical levels. The most generous bet gave him 15 seconds in the arena before being incapacitated. Even Professor Glob got in on the action. "I've placed a substantial wager on you lasting at least 20 seconds, the jellyfish confided while floating next to Mack in the nutritional center. "I've been studying human physiology, and your pain tolerance is actually quite remarkable." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Mack replied dryly. On the eve of the competition, Mack sat alone in his quarters, reviewing everything he had learned about his opponents. Strength wouldn't win this fight. Speed wouldn't win this fight. Advanced technology wouldn't win this fight. But perhaps, just perhaps, being human would. The day of the combat trials arrived with all the subtlety of a supernova. The Academy's massive arena had been transformed for the occasion, with representatives from a dozen worlds in attendance. Apparently, watching a human get dismembered by apex predators was quality entertainment in the civilized galaxy. "Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary sentients of all classifications," boomed the announcer, a hovering drone with unnecessarily dramatic lighting effects. "Welcome to the Tricentennial Predator Trials." The crowd roared with enthusiasm, creating a cacophony of sounds ranging from subsonic rumbles to ultrasonic screeches. First, introducing our visiting champions. The mantis shark creature entered the arena to thunderous applause. From the Skar Dominion, undefeated in 17 planetary conquest campaigns, the hunter marshal Krezak. Krezak raised its bladed appendages, drawing appreciative clicks and whistles from the crowd. From the Vex'thul Collective, master of 1,000 toxins and winner of the Galactic Venom Olympics for 6 consecutive cycles, Tentacle Commander Vorks. The mass of tentacles and biological weapons slithered into the arena, its body pulsating with fluorescent colors. And representing the Crystalforge Alliance, forged in the heart of a neutron star and capable of withstanding the vacuum of space unprotected, Crystal Sovereign Nixthala. The crystalline being floated into the arena, the air around it distorting with heat and gravitational anomalies. And now, representing the Galactic Defense Academy. The first 2 cadets entered to respectable applause, Vex'thul flexing his 4 massive arms, and Lumash's energy form pulsing with confidence. And finally, in a surprise selection, representing both the Academy and the planet Earth, the announcer paused for dramatic effect, but the pause stretched uncomfortably long as the crowd waited in confused silence. Cadet Mack Reynolds. A human. Mack walked into the arena to scattered, confused applause and more than a few snickers. He wore the standard Academy combat suit, which looked hilariously inadequate compared to the natural weapons of his opponents. Dean Kruger approached the center of the arena, looking like someone attending his own funeral. "The rules are simple," he announced. 3 one-on-one matches, combat until submission or incapacitation. No fatal techniques. He glanced nervously at the Predator representatives are permitted. The species with the most victories will claim the Predator's trophy and eternal glory. The Dean looked at Mack with something approaching pity. "The human has requested to go first." This announcement was met with surprised murmurs and increased betting activity in the stands. "Very well," said Hunter Marshal Krezak, stepping forward. "I shall face the human." Mack nodded, rolling his shoulders as he moved to the center of the arena. The mantis shark towered over him, its serrated limbs gleaming under the lights. "I will try to leave enough of you intact for scientific study," Krezak said, mandibles clicking in amusement. "Appreciate that," Mack replied. The referee, a floating robotic sphere, hovered between them. "Combatants ready? Begin in 3, 2, 1. The sphere emitted a piercing tone, and Krezak launched forward with blinding speed, bladed limbs slicing through the air in a deadly pattern designed to incapacitate in a single strike. Mack sneezed. It wasn't a normal sneeze. It was one of those violent, full-body sneezes that seem to originate from the very depths of human sinuses, the kind that leaves bystanders saying bless you with genuine concern for your well-being. And as luck or perhaps human biology would have it, Mack sneezed directly into Krizak's face. The arena fell silent as the mighty Hunter Marshal froze mid-attack, its compound eyes widening in what could only be described as pure horror. Then, with a sound like a deflating balloon, the mantis shark collapsed to the ground, its exoskeleton rattling against the arena floor as it convulsed. The referee sphere darted down, scanning the fallen predator. Contestant Krizak is incapacitated? It somehow managed to make a statement sound like a question. Victory too. The human? The silence in the arena was so complete you could have heard a dust particle land. Then, as reality reasserted itself, chaos erupted. What just happened? The announcer screeched, all pretense of professionalism abandoned. Medical drones rushed to Krizak's side as Professor Glob's excited voice carried over the commotion. Absolutely fascinating. The human's nasal expulsion appears to contain compounds that act as a powerful neurotoxin to the Skar nervous system. Mack, looking slightly embarrassed, wiped his nose on his sleeve. Sorry about that. Allergies, I think. The next few hours were a blur of medical examinations, frantic diplomatic negotiations, and increasingly hysterical demands for explanations. Mack found himself in the Academy's medical bay, surrounded by scanning equipment and wide-eyed xenobiologists. Absolutely remarkable, Professor Glob bubbled, manipulating holographic displays of Mack's sinus cavities. It appears that common bacteria in human nasal mucus produces compounds nearly identical to the neurotoxins secreted by the Skar's only natural predator, extinct for millennia. One sneeze essentially mimicked a predatory attack on their most fundamental neurological level. Dean Kruger paced anxiously. And the Skar representative? Recovering but deeply traumatized, reported the medical officer. It appears to have triggered a primal fear response dormant in their genetic memory. The tentacled and crystalline champions had immediately withdrawn from the competition, citing unforeseen biological incompatibilities. In diplomatic terms, they were terrified. Commander Nix Vex entered the medical bay, looking at Mack with an expression that couldn't decide between horror and admiration. The entire Predator delegation is requesting emergency evacuation. The Skar representative keeps babbling about the death-spewing face orifices of humans. This is a diplomatic nightmare, Dean Kruger groaned. 3,000 years of peaceful relations with the Predator species, and a human cadet destroys it with a sneeze. Actually, interrupted Professor Krex, who had been analyzing data on a separate console, I believe this may be the most fortuitous accident in Galactic Confederation history. All eyes turned to the multi-limbed professor. You see, Krex continued, humans have been grossly underestimated by the galactic community. This incident has prompted me to conduct a more thorough analysis of human biology in comparison to other sentient species. He activated a holographic display that showed a rotating human figure alongside various alien anatomical charts. Humans evolved on what we classically define as a death world high gravity, extreme temperature variations, intense solar radiation, and an astonishing array of predators and pathogens. As a result, they developed defenses and capabilities that we've completely overlooked. The hologram zoomed in on various human body systems. Human saliva contains enzymes that can break down the exoskeletal compounds of 17 different sentient species. Their stomach acid can dissolve metals that our most advanced mining colonies struggle to extract. Their immune systems constantly wage microscopic warfare against invaders that would wipe out entire alien populations. In short, ladies and gentlemen, humans are walking biological warfare factories. A stunned silence fell over the room. But they're so squishy, Commander Nix Vex finally said. And therein lies the brilliance of their evolution. Krex replied. They don't need external armor or weapons, they internalize their defenses. While we evolved to survive in specific environments with specific threats, humans evolved to survive anything. Mack cleared his throat. Professor, I think you're making me sound a lot more impressive than I am. I just have seasonal allergies. Allergies? Krex exclaimed. Another fascinating human defense mechanism where your immune system is so aggressive it sometimes attacks harmless substances. Do you realize that the histamine response that causes your allergies would kill most carbon-based sentient life forms? Dean Kruger rubbed his armored temples. So you're telling me that humans aren't the fragile, primitive species we thought they were, but rather walking biohazards that could potentially incapacitate the most feared warriors in the galaxy with a case of the sniffles? Precisely, Krex confirmed cheerfully. The news spread through the Academy faster than a quantum transmission. By evening, the entire student body's attitude toward Mack had undergone a complete reversal. The cadets who had previously mocked the human now maintained a respectful and notably increased distance. Is it true your sweat can burn through Vex'thul protective membranes? One wide-eyed cadet asked in the nutritional center. I heard humans can regenerate limbs, whispered another. Someone said they drink a substance that would paralyze most species, but they consume it for pleasure. Mack tried to correct these rapidly escalating rumors, but somehow his denials only seemed to confirm his species' terrifying reputation. By nightfall, he had gone from being the Academy's joke to its most feared cadet. 6 months after what was now being called the Sneeze Incident, the Galactic Defense Academy had undergone significant changes. A new wing dedicated to xenobiological defense had been established, with a particular focus on understanding and potentially harnessing human biological capabilities. The combat training now included sessions on unconventional biological advantages, a polite term for things humans do naturally that terrify other species. Mack had been promoted to special instructor, teaching a seminar titled Human Physiological Adaptations in Combat Scenarios, which was consistently oversubscribed despite being entirely optional. And that concludes today's lesson on the tactical applications of human endurance running, Mack announced to his class. Remember, while most species evolved for speed over short distances, humans evolved to literally chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. A Vex'thurian cadet raised a trembling appendage. Is it true that humans can continue pursuing prey even after sustaining injuries that would incapacitate other species? Well, we call it walking it off, but essentially, yes, Mack confirmed. Any other questions? I've heard, a crystalline cadet said hesitantly, that humans intentionally consume capsaicin, a compound designed by plants to prevent consumption for pleasure. Is this true? Mack smiled. We call those hot peppers, and yes, we put them on our food because we enjoy the sensation. The collective shudder that ran through the classroom was almost audible. As the cadets filed out, Dean Kruger entered the teaching chamber, his massive frame somehow seeming less intimidating than it had a year ago. Instructor Reynolds, he rumbled. A moment of your time. Of course, Dean. Kruger waited until they were alone before speaking. The Galactic Confederation Security Council has reached out with a rather unusual request. Sir, it seems that word of your capabilities has spread. The 3 predator species have formally requested that humans be assigned as diplomatic security escorts for their delegations at the upcoming Galactic Summit. Mack blinked. They want humans as bodyguards, the same humans they were mocking as weak less than a year ago. It appears that being feared is a form of respect in their cultures, Kruger explained. And currently, humans are the most feared species in known space, at least among those who understand your true nature. Mack couldn't help but laugh. So we went from being the galaxy's weaklings to its bogeyman based on a sneeze. Essentially, Kruger's expression shifted to something almost like respect. The Confederation has also fast-tracked the admission of Earth to the Security Council. It seems having a species that can incapacitate apex predators with their normal bodily functions is considered a valuable deterrent. I'm not sure whether to be proud or horrified, Mack admitted. Both are appropriate responses, Kruger said with what might have been the alien equivalent of a smile. Oh, and one more thing, the Academy will be accepting 50 new human cadets next term. 50? Last year they barely wanted one. Times change, Kruger said philosophically, though we will be implementing new protocols. All human cadets will be required to wear filtration masks during allergy season, and the cafeteria will have a strictly separated human food section. He shuddered slightly. After learning what you voluntarily consume, it seems prudent. As Kruger departed, Mack looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Humanity had spent decades trying to prove they belonged among the advanced species of the galaxy, attempting to demonstrate their intelligence, their technology, their cultural achievements. And in the end, all it took was one badly timed sneeze to show the galaxy that humans were, in their own unique way, absolutely terrifying. The next day, Mack received a package from Earth, a care package from his mother, filled with human snacks and comforts from home. Among the items was a small bottle of hot sauce with a note, "Thought you might be missing the spice of home. Love, Mom." "Mom." Mack grinned as he pocketed the bottle. It might come in handy during the next diplomatic reception. After all, nothing said respect me quite like casually consuming something that would make most species think you were immune to chemical weapons. Humanity had finally found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, not as technological marvels, but as the species you really didn't want to mess with. Because you never knew what terrifying biological response might be triggered. And that, in the end, was humanity's greatest weapon. They were weird, they were unpredictable, and they had absolutely no idea how scary they actually were.